thank you for joining us tonight from Peace at Home Parenting. My name is Aaron Weintraub. I'm the curriculum coordinator for Peace at Home Parenting and a teacher and a father myself of an almost 20-year-old, a newly 11-year-old, and a newly 7-year-old. And I am so excited tonight to be joined by Amy Alomar and Mike, who I know as Mike, but didn't put his last name up there. What's your last name, Mike? I'm so sorry.
Fauteur. Mike Fauteur. Thanks for being here. Thanks for
awesome.
having me. Yeah.
Well, Amy, why don't you introduce yourself, and then we can hear more from Mike as well.
Wonderful. So I'm happy to be here. My name's Amy Alomar, and I work with taking sort of the intersection of education and how to use what we know works and how we talk with kids and how they build understanding and how do we apply that to family and parenting practices. I'm a teacher for 20 plus years in K-12 and higher education, and I've written 2 books in the use of reflective practice and conversation with kids. Yeah. Mike, go for it.
I'm Mike Fauteur. I'm a 20-year educator, middle and high school math. I've been an administrator, and most recently I directed innovation for a network of schools where I had the amazing job of coming up with prototypes and working with other teacher prototypes and scaling them to benefit not just our schools, but schools outside of our network. It was a lot of fun. And that's where some of the work that I know we're going to talk about tonight came from. And I'm just thrilled to be here.
Okay. Well, that's a good segue, Mike, because I know that for you to personally have invested so much of your time and energy into an organization that studies gratitude, and for the schools that you work with to think it's important enough to invest their resources, there must be something really important about it to you. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about why you chose this in particular to put your creative energy and time into.
I found that gratitude was something of a superfood for student emotions, and not just student emotions, but also educator emotions. I was teaching math, 9th grade. I had a lot of my kids come in with, on average, 5th grade math skills, some as far back as 2nd grade. And I needed a way for them to feel safe, to feel connected, and to really develop the pro-social skills, the social emotional skills that I know would be necessary for them to collaborate, to accelerate their learning. And I spent all this time teaching social emotional learning next to the math, and gratitude was just had this disproportionate effect. It's very student-centered. It's strengths-based. You can't really be critical while you're thanking somebody. And it turned out to be a remarkable way to help students feel seen and appreciated, kind of take off their armor, and then build essential skills as they're recognized, so they could grow both personally and academically. So I saw the impact, and I decided I want to do more of this and spread it across schools and help folks with the work.
Now, Amy, I know, and we'll get to bringing it into the home as well. But Amy, I know that you also have a career in the schools. Could you talk a little bit about why this topic is important to you and some of the value that you've seen in it?
Yeah, so I think it's a lot about that feeling of safety and allowing students to be authentically engaged, because when you feel connected to the community that you're working in, it's really hard to produce a paper or to solve a math problem or to do a science lab if you don't feel comfortable in your space, and kids can come into school with so many different emotions and so much baggage that we don't see. And so that is just, gratitude offers them this opportunity to just kind of level things out a little bit and connect with each other and feel part of a true community. And it can be as simple as a thank you, but when it is orchestrated for a class or for, a grade level or an entire school community, you've heard of things where you might do like shout outs or like, hey, and you highlight a student or you highlight, somebody on a soccer team or at a recital, but that's just the one kid, right? And so what this does is it sort of allows us all to be part of something, and we're recognized for something that we've done. So that can be very empowering for somebody when you're, oh, I've been noticed for that. I never thought of myself that way. Wow. or it really resonates with how I think of myself and it reinforces who I am. So that can be very powerful for a young child. And we've seen for older kids, especially now, you know, I don't want to say post-pandemic, but maybe like mid-pandemic or moving through pandemic, they've lost a lot of those social emotional skills, like the making eye contact or having a conversation, or even like getting up and moving your body when somebody comes in a room, right? Like they don't have all of those soft skills that they need to participate in relationships. And this is one way toward them.
Something I heard that you both mentioned is, Mike, you used the phrase letting down their armor, I think, and I love that. And Amy, you talked about a sense of safety as a foundational skill to some of the other outcomes. What do you think? What do you see as the path from? Not everybody may have be able to make that connection. What's the path from gratitude to this sense of vulnerability and safety that's important for some of those other things that you just mentioned?
Take it away, Mike.
Sure. So I usually respond by saying that the S in SEL is the tricky part, the social. And we're all complicated people and have different aspects to our identity. We're not just limited to race, class, gender, popularity, position, age. I mean, there's so many parts of us. And when people are asked to interact and to learn and grow with others, the social aspect can sometimes create challenges for them as they navigate the different parts of their identity. And Amy's use of the word safety is really important because, as Amy said, if you don't feel safe, you really don't care about learning the Pythagorean theorem or doing a chore at home, whatever the case might be. You need a sense of safety and connection. And what's interesting about gratitude, to answer your question, is that because it's very strengths-based and because it can be student-centered, it's not only the teacher who has to hold it, people can use it as a means to foster new connections and navigate those barriers, because there's a permission and a safety and the structure of, I'm just thanking Aaron, even if he's popular and I'm not. And that actually could be a catalyst for us to become friends, or at least cordial with each other. So the entire structure of gratitude lends itself to being accessible and to being safe to help people navigate the interpersonal. I'd say the other thing that's interesting is, if you write someone a note and I send it over to Amy, I just send it to her, I put it on her desk, or I hand it to her. That's just a very one-to-one interaction. And that's also very safe. If I had to do that in front of the whole class, that could maybe be less safe. And so there are ways you can practice gratitude that support people to navigate the parts of their identity, to connect with others in ways that are healthy and that they feel that they can access, which to me, in a word, is equity. That everybody, regardless of their identity, can safely access the practice and its benefits.
So gratitude as a leveler, or a common denominator in social emotional relationships. And I like that.
And everything that Mike's saying, and he's developed this amazing system that allows you to do that private communication, but also kind of build toward community in a school. But all of that can be done at home too. We've got parents and educators probably in our audience. And so when we talk about it's student-centered, it's child-centered, it's whoever's thanking and being thanked-centered. So parents, kids, grandparents, community members, all of them, teachers, co-students, they're all part of it. And so that idea, that's a very educational term, sort of student-centered, but what it means is it's person-centered. And so I'm equal to you in the way we thank one another. And I can recognize you even if you are sort of in charge, right? And you can recognize me no matter what our relationship is.
Something else that I heard you both mention, which I'm interested in too, is you both mentioned the role of the sort of facilitation in that process of gratitude, the support role that a teacher or parent or caregiver would play in that. Would either of you want to say anything about why that's important or something specific?
Yeah,
sure. I'll start maybe. There's some interesting research on just cognitive development. And to me, the key part of it is a child, certainly a student, but a child cannot be expected to demonstrate a skill or behavior until they can first accurately recognize it in action. So if you keep saying, Mike, be patient, I might not know what that is. And so what's interesting about gratitude is it can be a mechanism for me to practice as a child, thanking others, recognizing, for example, patience in others. I can see it when my parents model it or my teachers model it and point it out. But the more I practice recognizing Amy for her patience, and then the facilitator, being the parent or the teacher, being like, absolutely. And what did she do for her to be patient? She was attentive and she waited to speak until you were finished. Okay, I understand what she did now. So the more I practice that, supported by facilitation from a parent or teacher, the better I get at recognizing it, and then the better I'll be at demonstrating it. And the nice thing about gratitude is it's two ways. So I can practice recognizing it in others, and I get feedback when people thank me for it. And I'll tell you, the thing that shifted my practice as a teacher and my role as an uncle, and I have a 3-month-old now, and he's not really responding to my gratitude yet, but I'm sure he will at one point. But one of the things that changed my practice and the practice of teachers I would coach the most was when I helped them explore the idea of, yes, you can correct decision-making and behaviors in class, and you want to spend at least an equal amount of time, if not more, catching people doing the right thing. The more you catch people meeting expectations, like being patient, the more they understand what they are, and the more that they feel valued, and you build a connection with them, but also you reinforce the thing you're catching them doing. So gratitude as a parent or an educator, and I could tell plenty of stories, is just a great way to do positive reinforcement in a real way that will reinforce not just the bond, but the skill that you're identifying. And the facilitation helps to bring it back to your original question.
Yeah. And that's something at Peace at Home that we always talk about, right? Like punishment, it can shift behavior for the moment, but it doesn't work as much as catching them in the act, praising the effort, praising what they're putting into something and really helping them to be a part, kids being a part of their own consequence building, right? So that is very much in line with it. And the only thing I would add to that is, as a parent myself, having a practice at home is really important. And then you are the facilitator as the parent. And then you don't have to hold it like you do in a classroom. Sometimes you maybe need to continue that facilitation. As a parent, you can share that facilitation role pretty quickly as the kids get used to it, if you have a true practice. For us, it's at the dinner table. For many, it's at bedtime. For some, it's journals, thank you notes. But, just really a true practice, meaning it happens regularly.
Yeah, and I think that, taking what, Mike, I heard you say about gratitude being something that can be done, anybody can do it. It can be done at sort of a lot of different ages and stages of development, but it might look different. You have a young child, and, Amy and I have children different ages too. And I guess when I think about gratitude and what we talk about when we're talking about gratitude, it sort of encompasses or can encompass a whole spectrum of behaviors and developing sense of self, from being thankful all the way up to being wise. And one of the ways I talk about this with the kids I work with in my practice, or the way I think about it, is, a young child may go to the fridge and get an apple and then sit and eat it and go, fantastic. Look how, I got this apple, and I got this apple out of the fridge and I ate this apple. Amazing. But then as they get older and with some guidance and experience, they have a sense of, well, the apple didn't just appear in the fridge. My parents put it in the fridge. And then as they get a little bit older, my parents worked and gave their time to purchase this apple, to put it in the fridge. Somebody worked in the store to keep it clean and stock the shelves and drive the truck late at night. Somebody planted the seed, all the way up to this sense of whatever something greater than yourself is. The plant, the planet nourished, the soil nourished this apple. And what gratitude is to me this is kind of a hot take. Maybe I'm just thinking of this as time. We're really focused on independence and fostering independence in our children, but this is a parallel and equally and maybe more important process of maintaining a sense of dependence, because without that sense of dependence and without gratitude, we can't feel love. Because we don't have, when you feel like you went and you got the apple yourself, you feel pride, but you can't feel loved by your parents for putting in the time to work and purchase that apple, and loved by the planet for producing the apple and whatnot. So I don't know. That's my thought about that. Amy, I know that you focus a lot on character building. Do you want to say anything about that?
I have an apple almost every day for lunch, and now I'm thinking, wow, I really don't practice enough gratitude for that apple. I'm going to give it more thought tomorrow. Yeah, I mean, really, gratitude helps us develop that sense of self-satisfaction. It helps us develop empathy for others. It helps us develop that connectedness, but that self-satisfaction, because if you don't recognize what you have, you're going to be looking for more, right? And so I think that's huge. And when we talk about character building for our kids, we really want to focus on who they are, not what they achieve, right? Not what they bring home. And I think that gratitude plays a huge role in this, because we are helping them to see their role in the world. Who am I as part of this family? Who am I as part of my community? And what am I doing, right? And so when we practice gratitude, it can start really simple. Oftentimes it's like, I'm just so glad you made spaghetti tonight for dinner, right? Like, it can be something really simple, but as you demonstrate it and model it, it will get deep and you'll be surprised. Kids will think about things like, I'm really grateful that my teacher helped me study extra for my test, right? Like, things will come up that maybe you didn't even know happened in the day. And even sweet moments. I remember one time my daughter was grateful for the hole, and we were like, what does that mean? And apparently they would like dig this hole at recess, and like one day it got really, really big. And, she was just so excited about it. And, we learned something that day about what she was doing at school. So it deepens those relationships and who our kids are, and it allows them self-expression.
Yeah. And then I'm just thinking, like, it's as the guide in that, and as somebody who is guiding the conversation, the focus may be on the whole, but it's not really the whole, right? And to help them understand that it's the building a whole with friends. It's doing something that you see getting bigger. It's all of those things that help us go from, thanks for the spaghetti to thanks for being a parent who, after a long day of work, takes the time to make me a meal and bring it to me at the table, and make conversation, even though not everything I say is super exciting and interesting. So, I love that.
There's an interesting piece on the components of gratitude to build off what both of you were saying. And when we work with kids, we typically focus just on the first three, which is, can you name the benefactor? So who, what's the benefit? Well, the thing that happened, what is it? Well, the whole, or it could be the apple. Like, the apple is the benefit. The apple was good. But then there's the impact. Well, great, you were specific on who and what, but why does that matter? How did it impact you? Well, I was hungry. Now I'm not hungry anymore. I ate the apple, and that was great. The latter two components, we roll out later as kids get older and wiser, but those are cost and intention. And so what did it cost the person? Well, my mom or dad had to go work and put it there. Oh, right. Okay. Well, was that all? Well, actually, they went out of their way to get apples because they know that's for my health, and they were very intentional about that. And so there's these components of gratitude that you can help make visible to children as it's age appropriate, where they can go, right, and they can deepen the practice, like you're saying, Amy, to go more than just a cursory thank you, but to realize, like, yeah, I wouldn't have wanted to make the time to go to the store at 5 p.m. and, like, mom or dad did. So I think you're both spot on with how you're talking about it.
Something that I think is a little trickier for parents and teachers, and Mike, maybe you've got some research on this that you could help us with, or Amy, some experience and research of your own, is that the leap from those steps of gratitude that you mentioned to the next piece of a sense of connectedness, obligation, and reciprocity. And I think that we try to do this, foster this all the time by, you know, I make my kid wave at the bus driver every morning before he gets on the bus and say thank you when he gets off. You know, he's not really thankful. She's maybe feels appreciated by me, but knows not necessarily by him. So it's not, you know, it's performative. Is there value in for parents of enforcing those norms of politeness, and or is there danger in conflating that with true gratitude? Maybe you could help me with that.
Do you want to start, Amy?
Oh, no, you go ahead.
Okay, I would say yes, that you should do it. And I'll give an analogy as to why. I think of how people learn to paint. So if someone's teaching you how to paint, they don't say, here's a canvas, just go nuts. You can try to get better with different techniques and whatnot while you're doing that. But the same is true of even language. Like, it's not like go write an essay. You need to teach people the components. And what's interesting with painting, one of the ways you teach people is to have them copy brushstrokes. Like, I need you to go copy this swirl or this way of doing, changing a gradient as the color changes over some space. And they practice copying. And the connection here to this is you practice the niceties and the norms, because it starts to register and put anchor points. Like, this matters. I don't really get it right now, but okay, I'm just going to copy mom and dad or whoever's telling me to do this, my teacher. But then when you're ready to take more ownership and agency and to go deeper, you have the initial schema and the components, and you realize the value because it's been pointed out to you that this does matter. And sure, I've had people push back and go, just saying thank you for, I don't know, holding the door. Like, that's just why. It's like, there's a spectrum, and it's an opportunity to connect and let someone know you see them. And it doesn't mean it's worthless. It's an and. It helps you prepare for when you do want to go deeper in some of the ways, Amy, that you talked about. So it's an absolute yes, in my opinion, because it teaches you the brushstrokes. So then you can be creative and have your own picture on a canvas later. When you can recognize those moments, you have the syntax and the moves to create it.
Yeah, I mean, I echo all of that. I think it just gives you the tools of how to start, and you're also modeling. So it's not that your son isn't grateful to the bus driver. Your son may not be thinking about what it is to be grateful. And I'm gonna actually tell you, you're gonna think, oh, her kids are just perfect because she's got these great stories. I mean, we definitely have our own, struggles, but our son, we have a bus driver shortage right now, like many people across the country. We've got, teacher shortages, custodial shortages. I mean, the kids notice these things. The bus has been late every single day, and to the point where it's hours late sometimes. The bus driver was having a hard time. Another kid wasn't nice. And my son came home and told us this and said that he had written a note in the back of the bus while they were driving, and just said, I just wanted her to know, like, we appreciate her. Like, I need the bus. And I didn't tell him to do that, but we had modeled it over the years. We'd always made, like, little cupcakes for the bus driver at the holidays or whatever. And because they're a person in your community. And that's what you're doing. You're honoring people around you. So when you hold that door, when you pick up the pencil for your, friend in class, whatever it is, it's somebody in your community. And so that's what you're doing is you're modeling it, and you're teaching them the how to. And I think, just like Mike said, you're teaching them the brushstrokes is a beautiful way to put it, because they wouldn't know how. If you didn't make them write that thank you note to grandma for their holiday gift, they're never going to learn it until you show them how to write dear and address the envelope and sign it. What goes in it, they can come up with that stuff. Yeah.
So these are some awesome everyday gratitude practices and reasons. Do either of you have any traditions or rituals that you that are special to this time of year with the holidays season?
Yeah, I mean, I think, like, this season is, like, great because it puts this huge focus on Thanksgiving, and we want people to have a focus on gratitude, and we want them to know it's important. And I think what I would just want to stress is this is like a kickoff event for your year, right? Like, you should be giving thanks all year. And the days that you feel like you don't have much to be grateful for are the most important days to give thanks because you do have so much, right? Like, and it does make you mindful of what you've got. So it helps train, like our brains are kind of trained to seek the negative to protect ourselves. We're critical, we're human, and we seek that sort of critical thing in life, right? Like, oh, this didn't go right, or I got to protect myself, right? And so when we start to practice gratitude, it actually changes the way we think and we seek the positive. And it's a really important thing to do. So I say, yay for this time of year and yay for traditions and rituals to kick it off, but actually you want something that will last. And so I think I mentioned earlier in our family, when we sit down for dinner together, we share a piece of news, and it doesn't have to be happy, and we share gratitude. And that doesn't have to be deep or meaningful, but it can be. And so that's something that we can do throughout the year. And some families will say, oh, I can't sit down for family dinner. And that's okay. Like, find a time when you can exchange this. It could be, in the morning, it could be a walk, it could be, game night. But I would just say, like, shoot for that time where you're truly engaging with one another, and you can do it. Yeah.
For me personally, I try just before I'm falling asleep because my mind is going a mile a minute. So there's personal gratitude and interpersonal. And I think interpersonal is critical, and there's a space for personal. And so for me, just to kind of run through what are just 3 good things that happened to me today. Not that they're going to solve issues completely, and they certainly don't ever solve real trauma. I never would make that case. However, gratitude practice, like you said, Amy, it changes your brain. And so the more you do it, it actually builds resilience. So these things are hard, and there are these 3 good things. And it's kind of like counting sheep, but it helps me fall asleep. And there's amazing research that says actually it helps you sleep better. It can lower blood pressure. I mean, it's a wonderful way to end my day, at least. And so that's one thing I do. Something else I started a long time ago, because this was modeled to me by my parents, who told me, call your grandparents. I call them. And I started calling them 15 years ago, maybe about once a week. And I still call my 101-year-old grandmother about once a week. And I thank her for something. And it's started as a small thing. And I think maybe it's more for me at this point. But I like to think that, me valuing and honoring, how she helped me grow up as a person, and thinking back to that, through her life, is something that matters and is meaningful to her. So those routines I've tried, as Amy said, to carry throughout the year, because it may be a month, but it really should be a way we add to our routine diet for our own kind of emotional hygiene, if you will.
Love that. You mentioned talking to your grandmother with the phone. I know that, Mike, your gratitude gift to the world is based on this, the vehicle for it's this website. Can you talk a little bit about how you found technology to change the gratitude landscape, either in positive or challenging ways?
Yeah, I'll be the first person to say it's always practice first, tech second. And anyone who comes at you with those reversed is probably not thinking about it the right way and has likely not been an educator. So we, meaning myself and the students and educators at the school I taught at, which was a high school in the Oakland East Bay out here in California, we just wanted to find a way to create safer access, as I had mentioned before, to expressing gratitude to one another. So we knew the gratitude practices were important. But one of the challenges was, and you might see this in your meetings, whether it's in classes or in meetings professionally, if you ask someone to thank someone, I want 3 volunteers to thank people, it's always the same 3 lovely people putting their hands up, whether they're adults or kids, and they mean very well. And so one of the challenges was, how can we logistically give everyone access? So that's the first thing. And as an educator, I also know if I pause and let people write individually and process and think, anything I do next is going to be richer, because everyone had some time to process. And so there was a desire to find a way to logistically create greater access for everybody. But there was also a desire to create one-to-one connection, because that S in SEL, that public expression, was hard. And an example I'll give is young men. So the young men in our school were perfectly comfortable making fun of another young man publicly. No problem. However, expressing thanks to another young man was not viewed as masculine by some because they were showing they needed help. And so that's one example of an identity, but you could think of someone who's still learning the primary language, someone with learning difficulties, someone who's shy, someone who doesn't know how to navigate popularity boundaries. We wanted to find a way to create connection, space that was declared and safe for people. And when we thought about it and we looked at it, we knew the practices that were really important. We realized that there was a place for technology to complement and to create that safety. And so the ability to send an interpersonal thank you note that teachers can monitor, but only you would see, Aaron, if I sent it to you, other than our teacher, Amy, and that you can't even reply to. You can't, there's no reply button. You just have to sit there and be thanked. People are terrible at just sitting there and getting thanked. It's just like they're bad at getting complimented. We realized there were really important roles that technology could play to create that safety. And I would say the coherence. And I guess the last piece on this coherence I'll mention is, imagine if you could see every thank you note you ever received in one place, sorted into piles by reason. And I don't know about you, but I have a folder, it's purple, that I was given my first year of teaching by a mentor. And they said, put every thank you note you ever get in here. Parent, kid, doesn't matter. I said, oh, okay. And about 4 years ago, I had it opened at the end of school one day, and I don't know why. I started moving these notes around by reason into piles. And I started realizing this patience pile was much higher, literally higher on my desk than others. And I didn't know why, because I don't think of myself as a patient person. So I started opening the notes and I was looking at the evidence, and they said what I did to lead them to thank me for patience. And I said, wow, well, when was if kids had this experience? And they could see every thank you note in one place, and people could thank them across social barriers safely. And honestly, that's where we made the decision. Technology has a complementary role, but not the starring role. It's the practices that make the difference, but they're enhanced, and things can be more equitable when people have that safety and coherence.
Something I love about what you just said was that, the pile was nice, but it wasn't helpful. What was helpful was when you opened it and you saw the people who had taken the time to say what it was that they were grateful for, what you had done. Amy, you are somebody who I have learned a lot from about facilitating meaningful conversations. What are is there like a conversational skill, or a way of encouraging that gratitude sharing that children to be sort of skillful, intentional, specific in a way that's helpful, like that years later when you open your purple folder?
Well, I think guiding them through, what are you thankful for and why, like showing that evidence is a big piece of that. In terms of a conversational skill as the parent, I think refraining from judgment is huge, because when we judge, even to say, oh, that's such a great thing. Oh, thank you for sharing. That was so wise of you, right? If we just kind of step back and refrain from sharing judgment, it opens up the conversation. Judgment can shut it down, good and bad judgment. And then also, I love to encourage people to let go of expectations of where a conversation may go. So, like, what is a hole, right? like see where this will lead you. Because when you go into a conversation, like, we're going to do gratitude, and then I'm going to do this, and my gratitude's this, and you kind of expect things. It's not really a conversation. It's just kind of an exchange, transaction, really. But when you let go of it and you're just like waiting to see, then you're really listening. Then you're practicing true listening. You're not just, as the famous quote is, like, listening is more than just waiting for your turn to talk. You're really processing, and that can make a huge difference. When we started, I had some ideas, but then I'm listening to what Mike's saying and what you're asking, Aaron, and I'm thinking, oh, well, actually what they're asking is this. It's not to just do whatever I had in my notes to cover tonight, and so you really want to practice that with your kids, because it's honoring them and validating their ideas. Yeah.
I love that. I do want to get to what you had in your notes tonight, though. But I think what I just before we shift away from, I was just thinking again about something that Mike you said about that the way that sort of the personal or cultural things that the boys in your school or the young men were holding on to that was making them feel like they couldn't express gratitude publicly, is that sense of it, it can be humbling, it can be vulnerable, and sometimes parents aren't always comfortable being vulnerable or humbled in front of their children, but yet we've all talked tonight about the importance of modeling behaviors. Maybe one or each of you could sort of share an idea about how a parent could model gratitude, not in front of their child, but to their child for something.
Yeah. You want me to start, Mike? um, you know, we have a lot of, as our kids get older, so I have a 20-year-old, almost 21. I've got an 18-year-old and I have a 14-year-old. So we've been sort of modeling and having this practice of gratitude for quite some time now. And I'll just say on a personal note, we were going through sort of a personal drama, a personal tragedy with the family. And my son, who has been studying a lot in, sort of crisis management, he really helped out. He really helped us think through some decision making in a way that our children haven't ever had to step up and do that. And I was really impressed. And so my gratitude was authentic and genuine. So it wasn't even a choice of me showing vulnerability. I mean, he's my kid. He saw me going through something and he stepped up without anybody asking and provided really helpful advice and suggestions. And that was something that I felt, I took for granted at first, to be quite honest with you, because I was just sort of going through the motions, and then, was able to pause and step back and go, this was really helpful, which was kind of funny because we always call him Helpful Alex as sort of a funny, he sort of named himself that at a very young age, but it was really wonderful to be able to be authentically grateful to him. So I don't know if that's modeling, Erin. I mean, it just, because we had the true practice, it happened. Yeah.
Oh, that's beautiful. Yeah. Mike, do you want to say anything about that? Or?
I'm newly married. I have a new kid and my first, and but I've been an uncle for a little while. I think two quick things I'd share is whether it's the pleasantries or the cultural norms, saying thank you and recognizing your partner. There's actually great research. It matters a lot. Even if in the beginning it's just like, thanks for whatever, but it really matters, particularly if you add up all the little moments, right? They need to feel seen and appreciated. And I know I appreciate that. And I think it was particularly acute during the pandemic. My wife and I got a lot of time together. The other thing I would say, being an uncle, I have a twin brother who has, he has 5 kids, and 2 of them, 10 and 6, Lila and Liam. And I remember I was taking them out. I was going outside to play, do something like that. And my point here is I want to talk about direct versus indirect benefits, because I could shout you out, Erin, but the difference between a shout out and expression of gratitude is I derive a benefit either directly or indirectly if I'm grateful to you. I can just shout you out for something that it doesn't really affect me. But if I'm grateful to you, something directly or indirectly benefited me. And I remember we're trying to get out the door, and Lila was ready because she's 4 years older, and Liam was, just trying to pick which shoes he wanted to wear. And I was harried and kind of stressed because we were late. And to this day, I don't know if she noticed that or not. Now that really matters, because if she noticed it, her decision to be patient, because I could see she wanted to say something to her brother. And if she did, we were going to be there a lot longer. But she didn't. And I watched her make a different decision and stop herself. And I caught her before that decision could reverse itself and say, hey, Lila, I really want to thank you for being patient right now. I know you might want to say something, and I appreciate that you're already ready to go, but you're choosing not to say something right now. I made sure she knew what she did to equal patience. And I just said, I really want you to know that. And then the impact, I said, is I'm really stressed right now, and you're making this easier for me. Thank you. And that was super genuine. And again, if she didn't realize I was stressed and she did it, it cost her a little bit of time, and the intention was just not to make her brother mad, fine. But I indirectly benefited from that decision. And that's really helpful because a lot of people cast about, whether it's with new people they're trying to thank or a situation like that where they're like, it's going to feel weird or forced. Consider the indirect benefit you might be getting for how someone's decision or way of being is affecting a group that indirectly benefits you as something to thank. And I started doing more and more of that. And my relationship with them, I thought, became stronger. And certainly we navigated life together a little bit more easily.
Oh, I love that. Amy, you just mentioned your notes, and I hate to miss any opportunity to hear what you bring to a discussion. Is there anything about the topic of gratitude that's important to you that you think we should make sure as part of this conversation tonight?
Well, I would just only add, and we might have even said it earlier, that I think it's a community builder. So it's great for your parenting and it's great for your familial connections, but it's bigger than that. So you mentioned grandparents, Aaron, and we've talked about like other members of the community, but and your niece and nephew, Mike. I think it's something we can take care of each other in a time right now where we feel very disconnected. So not just our students, although that is like the microscope is on schools right now and social emotional learning, but not just our students, like as parents, like some of us have been out of work. Some of us have just been working from home. We're all in different situations. And this is a great way to make those connections and like reignite them, but also to make new connections, because who doesn't like being thanked, right? Like Mike said, it could feel awkward. Like it might, but like, who's going to be like, please don't do that. Take that back. They're just not going to. And it feels good. And so I think, any kind words you can share with real meaning is powerful. And I also love that you brought up, thanking your partner, because that's a relationship that we can take for granted. Everybody could take for granted really easily, especially if you have a very good relationship, because it works so smoothly. And so as parents, often we co-parent maybe with somebody in the home, maybe it's a spouse or partner, but also there's grandparents involved or babysitters or nannies involved. And so, just remembering your full community when you're talking about this, that we're all in this together, and it never hurts to acknowledge what somebody's putting into something. Yeah. And in fact, not only does it not hurt, it actually makes your relationship stronger.
Yeah, this is inspiring to me because I'm somebody who is not very comfortable. I get uncomfortable with thanks and praise, and I'm starting to get a different perspective on it, or an angle from hearing what you both have shared about the importance of it for the person who's sharing it. It's not necessarily just meant to compliment the person who's receiving, and how shutting that down may not be fair for the other person, saying something self-deprecating, or, and so I'm going to commit to working on just saying thank you and being more open to other people's gratitude. I think is particularly going into the Thanksgiving season. I'm going to practice that.
It's not inappropriate, but like Mike offers this full curriculum with give thanks and
no, not at all. Please. Yeah. I want to make sure we finish with hearing more about,
there's this like free set of practices that Mike, I think would work really well in families too, and those are just easily accessible. So, the whole program is amazing for schools, and this little set of practices that teachers can use as a one-off could also be used to strike up conversations in the family.
Yeah, well, that's a really helpful tie-in. I want to start to think about wrapping up tonight with maybe each of you could share sort of a way to reach you, or hear more about what you've shared and the practices that you've shared this evening, and then we can finish by each sharing something that we're grateful for. Amy, do you want to go first? And then Mike, you can share about give thanks, and we will put it into the chat so that when people watch this, either if you're watching it now live or if you are watching this later, you'll be able to visit Mike's organization. And Amy, if you like us to put anything in for you, we can do that as well. Do you want to?
Sure. I'm just Amy at amyalamar.com, and you can feel free to reach out to me. I work with Peace at Home Parenting, and I do some of the classes, so you'll see me in there as well. Yeah. Go ahead, Mike. You give it a shout out. And also, like, Giving Tuesday is coming up, so maybe people can support the effort.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate y'all bringing it up. And yeah, I think these practices are I'll speak to them in a moment for how I think they can support the families and particularly the holidays as they come up. I can be reached at mike@givethanks.org, and that's give THX as an X-ray.org, because we're really edgy. So feel free to email me there, or just do a Google search. You'll find the website. You can poke around, and the practices are on there. But I think the practices are lovely because we see students take them home and then lead them in the car ride home or on the bus ride home with one of their siblings or their parents, or at the dinner table, or like Amy said, there's so many places it could happen. And coming up to these holidays, I probably don't have to say, our country, the world, our country in particular, is going through some tough times. And sometimes the holidays, when you see family or extended friends, can create some intense moments. And it can be an and. You can have some intense moments, and you can help navigate them just by still saying thank you and recognizing and valuing other people. Because the thing that actually got me to walk away from my teaching and to start Give Thanks as a nonprofit was a ninth grader we were talking to who used the program the very first year. And we were asking her about it. She started quietly crying. We said, Maria, why are you crying? Are you okay? And she said, I just didn't know some of these people even knew who I was. I feel seen and appreciated for the things that I'm doing. And she didn't identify as popular and she identified as someone who's still learning the language. And so it was a big deal to her. And I realized at that moment, whether it's students, whether it's children at home, or whether it's families and friends trying to navigate the holidays, being seen and appreciated for who you are, it really matters. And I know we're out of time, but I just want to end by saying, this isn't just a nice thing or a nice to have. This is a gotta have connection and there's a huge research base on this. It's not squishy. There's a remarkable research base. Just go ahead and do some searches online. It's remarkable how powerful gratitude and how accessible it is. So mike@givethanks.org, and be happy to share the practices or give them in the notes, Aaron, if you want to link them so folks can peek at them and use them with their own families.
Awesome. We will definitely do that. And speaking of being seen for who you are, it's thx.org. And we'll get that. We'll change that in the chat and put the right link in. So Amy and Mike and I'll go to what's something that you're feeling grateful for this week or this evening or something? Amy?
Gosh, it sounds like a little lofty, but truly this week for our children's health and safety. that's something that super mindful of this week. Yeah.
And I'm grateful for, I went for a walk with a friend today in the woods. We live in central Connecticut here, and it was a beautiful fall day. And I don't get out of the house or talk to other adults very much. And I often think of myself as not needing that, but I really appreciated it today and felt its value as I'm feeling this conversation, talking to you all. Mike, how about you? What's something you're grateful for?
I am grateful for my son's smile. I didn't know this. I assumed babies smiled right away. Apparently they don't. So he started smiling. He's 3 months now. He started smiling maybe a month ago. I wasn't sure if it was gas, but it's so just sincere, and it greets me. He almost forgets I'm there every time, and then I come back and go, and it's just, man, I'm just so grateful for it. So in moments of stress, it just centers me, and it's been such a joyful step of discovery as I become a father, and I'm sure laughing will be the next thing I'm grateful for when he does that. But this is a pretty big one. It's been just a lovely de-stressor and thing to help me connect with him.
Oh, awesome. Well, I am grateful for this conversation with you all. I'm grateful for parents who've taken some time out of their evening or day to watch this and work on a gratitude practice, deepening a gratitude practice with their own children and families and perhaps themselves. I'm grateful for having been connected with this great resource of Give Thanks, and I am going to add it to my Giving Tuesday list, and I would encourage other people to as well. Thank you, Amy and Mike, for being here with us and giving your time and wisdom and practical advice. And we will do this again. It was really fun to be part of a team with you three. All right. And thank you, Pam, for your technical support tonight. Bye, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.